Hello and welcome to another episode in my Warhammer 40,000 Conquest series. In this episode we're finally going to be painting up our second container, but I'm going to show you some tips on how to do battle damage. Stay tuned. So thank you for joining me again. Please do click that subscribe button and the little bell icon so that you get all the notifications whenever I upload and you don't miss an episode. So as you can see, I've already base coated it. Handy tip is if you are using the sprays, to at least do one coat from the pot. This is so if you do make any mistakes later on and you neaten it up with obviously the paint from the pot, there isn't a difference in the finish. The reason being is that the spray paint and the pot paint have a slightly different finish to them, so it will look a bit patchy if you were fixing it up after only having it sprayed. So there we have it. You also notice that I have painted the inside with the silver paint. This is just to make it look like it's bare metal on the inside. You can't reach all the way in, but when it's on the table you're not going to see all the way in anyway. So all the breaches and the gaps I painted wherever I could with the silver. I also left out all the details as well, as they can be done later on after we finish painting the bulk of the container. So let's get to it. So first of all, what we're going to do is get the Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to make this container look dirty, filthy, horrible, nasty, unwashed, unclean, however you want to describe it. We are going to shade it, but we're also going to muck it up. That's because containers are rarely ever kept clean and tidy, and it's a quick way of shading the entire model, as it would take forever just to shade in all the gaps. So what you want to do is pour some out onto the palette. Remember, never do it straight from the pot, because one, it'll slowly dry the pot out, and also you got that risk of knocking it over and spilling it everywhere. So get a good amount on the palette, because you will need a lot for the container, and then get a brush to drop some water into it just to thin it out a little bit. Don't want too much, but you don't want to put it on straight from the pot because it would be a bit too strong. It is a very strong shade, so make sure you mix it well, and then you're good to go. Now there are two ways of doing it. You can either smother all of the surface of it, as I will do. So you make sure you get it into all the nooks and crevices and all over the panels, everywhere, just everywhere. Get a real good coating. Or you could be neat about it and you could go around the edges and along the raised areas like so, and bring out the shading like that. Only problem is that's going to take forever and it doesn't really give that dirty look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a large brush to speed the process up, cover the entire model, and then when it's dry I'm then going to go over again with Death Guard green. But I'm going to teach you about a technique called wet brushing. Now it's kind of like dry brushing, but it's not. So here is the finished product in regards to the shade. As you can see, it looks a lot dirtier, a lot darker, it's well shaded, and that's exactly what you want. Don't worry about having any marks where it's pulled slightly. It just looks like some muck has been washed up onto it, so it adds a little bit to the character. If it is still wet though, you can always push it around with a brush, but you want to make sure that it is dry before we go on to the next step. Now this step is kind of like dry brushing, but it's not as dry. I think, well, I call it anyway. I'll call it wet brushing. And the technique is similar. So you get some of your paint onto the palette, you work it into the bristles, take the worst off, but we're dry brushing you to keep going until you only get a little bit coming off the brush. With wet brushing, you don't go as far. You want to make sure there's still enough paint on the brush. So as you can see, because it is a bit wetter, you're still getting all the raised areas, but as well as all the details being picked out, it's also covering the flatter areas as well, which dry brushing wouldn't do as effectively. And at the same time, it's still leaving the shade in recesses, as you can see. So it's shaded, and now it's layered, and it's been based. So that's 3 steps done in no time. All you got to do is just follow this around the entire model. Make sure that you don't make it too wet, but if it is dry, you can always just add a little extra paint, and that's it. Just keep going in all directions and all angles. So once you've done all that and it's had time to dry, the next stage will be the battle damage. So I mean, you can fill in all the details if you wish, you know, the colours, the panels, whatever, but I want to get straight to the battle damage. So what you want to do is find the area you want to focus on. You get yourself some Abaddon Black, and we're going to do a process called stippling. So we'll do a couple of techniques to get battle damage, but the first one is stippling. Now you can get a special brush for this. It's very short. It looks like someone's just got a paintbrush and chopped most of the bristles off, which, you know, you can do if you've got an old beat up brush, but using what I've got from the subscription so far, I found that the best brush to do this with is the large dry brush. So what you want to do is get some of the Abaddon Black onto a palette, and just get the worst off, and then you can test it on your knuckle. So you're getting some off onto your knuckle, but you're not leaving streaks, kind of a bit like when you dry brush. And then you find the area that you want to put the damage, and you don't brush the strokes or anything. You start dabbing the tips along the edges, where all the metal is torn up, and try not to go too heavy or too far. Just cover enough so that, you know, it represents the paint that's been chipped away. So once you've done that, make sure you rinse the brush thoroughly, and then you want to grab yourself the lead belcher. Yeah, so grab the lead belcher, and this is to represent the bare metal that's underneath the paint. So I mean, it all depends on what color metal you want to do. You can use this technique, it's exactly the same, you just change the color. So again, take some, put it on a palette, dry it but not too much, test it on your knuckle if you can, and then what we're going to do is stipple this over the areas you've done in the Abaddon Black, but on the edges furthest away from, you know, the edge of the Abaddon Black furthest away from the edge of the tears, you want to leave just a thin line of that black exposed. This is just to give it a sort of 3D look, you know, it gives it some shade, well, not shade, it gives it a false shadow, so it kind of looks like that the paint has some depth and you've chipped into that depth. And as you can see, it's not pretty, it does take practice, but you know, it is torn off, it's torn up metal and it's wrecked paint, so it's going to look like a mess anyway, so it serves its purpose. Now there is another way of doing this, It does require a bit more of a steady hand, but with practice, again, you can do it. So what you do is, with a regular brush, you paint nicely some patches of black, or you could do some streaks to represent a scratch. And once you've done that, you rinse the brush thoroughly, and then you get the lead belcher, and then you go back over the same areas that you've done in Abaddon Black, but leaving a little thin line of black around the edge of the silver. If you want to go a little bit further, you can always do it in a way so that it looks like the shade is relative to the light. So to do this, you would want to paint up right up close to the edge, where you want it to be the bit that's more exposed to the light, and then leave a thicker line of black to the bit that's going to be more shaded, so it gives a little false impression of light sourcing. And again, you do a similar thing with the tears on the edges as well. So you do the black, and then you paint on the silver, leaving just a little gap of black at the back that's furthest away from the tear. And that's it, really. It's that simple. So you just do it all over, and it starts coming together nicely. It does also take a fair bit of practice just to get the knack right, but once you do, it can look really effective. So enough with that. Now that you know how to do battle damage on your terrain, let's go have a look at what you guys have done at home. Okay, so first up we have this fantastic example of a very beaten container, and the weathering effects are fantastic on here. This is by Colin Harvard, and he sent this to me, and he said that he went for this color palette while practicing rust effects and wanted to contrast the browns, so he went with a turquoise color scheme for the container, and I have to say he's pulled it off very, very well. He's given it a real dirty look, and he wanted to go for a grimy look, like it's been sat at the bottom of an underhive dock for years, and I think he really has done the job. He's also done a bit of light sourcing there, so as you can see around the lamps, he's given it a glow effect just by spreading that paint further along and around the model, so where the light would shine. And all along the bottom he's dabbed and dry brushed some brown just to really make it look mucky as anything. And you can also see he's got some posters there, and I asked him about that, and he said that he had got it from a link supplied by Games Workshop, so I'll put that link in the description below. But it's from the Warhammer community team, and they got some really cool bits in there that you can print off, cut out, and then stick on yourself. So that's fantastic. So thank you very much for sending that in. This is by Stefan Phillips. I hope I said your name right. But here's a fantastic example of making it look beat up and worn without having to do much to the model itself. So he's obviously dry brushed a load of dirt, so dark colours to make it look like it's sort of burnt a bit, and that's sort of what he went for. So he said he wanted to go for a torched look rather than battle damage. So it looks like it's got oil spilt all over it, and it's like some of the paint's been stripped by fire. And then he's dabbed loads of Blood for the Blood God, I believe that is, which is a technical paint, to make it look like, you know, blood sprayed all over it. And also you got another little poster there as well, so yeah, it really does look fantastic, very grimy. So thank you very much for sending that one in. Right, and finally we have an entry from Jamie Bates. Now he sent me a couple of pictures of his stuff before and asked if he could send some more pictures of his containers, and I really liked his Bloodraven paint scheme, so I decided to pick out the ones with those, and he's done a fantastic job. So not exactly battle damaged, but I had to share the paint scheme because it does look cool. I really do like the red container, how it fits the Bloodraven theme, and yeah, even the open container he's painted all the way inside as well, so it's really nice to look at. And yeah, I mean, as you can see, he's done such a good job on all the details, and you can see the other Battlefield accessories there as well, he's painted in. And all together with those models, it looks fantastic, and I bet that looks great on the tabletop as well. So thank you very much for sending those in. So there you have it. Thank you to those three very lovely guys for sending in those pictures. You've done some fantastic work. Each have done their own little spin on the paint schemes and their own little effects as well. And I've liked each and every one for what they were as well. So carry on with the good work, guys. So thank you again for watching. I hope you found this video helpful and insightful, and I really want to see how you guys get on with those tips. So as always, hit me up on my social media. So you got me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, you can find me. Make sure that you do like and subscribe for more helpful tips, and let me know in the comments below what you thought about those pictures that featured in this episode. I have to say, some of those were fantastic. So I really hope that they help to give you guys the inspiration that you need to not put off painting those containers. And that's it for now. So before we go, our 40k thought for the day is: serve without question, die without regret. I'll see you next time.